All right, this is gonna be my last time recording this because I've recorded this like 3 times. Okay. Hey everyone. All right, so today we're gonna break down Obsession. Now, if you haven't seen the film yet, spoiler alert. So, I'm not gonna really talk about the film in jest. I'm just going to kind of break down what I think this film was trying to teach us. Again, if you haven't seen the film, spoiler alert, I'm going to break down the gist of the film. Now, it's about this guy named Bear who has this crush on this girl named Nikki. Make sure I'm getting the names right. And what happens is he gets this thing called the Wishing Willow. He makes a wish and she falls in love with him, but over time, Lord, over time, you start to notice that something's a bit off with her. And as the film progresses, you realize that it looks like she's possessed, and chaos ensues. Now, I've heard so many different breakdowns of this film, and a lot of them are really good. But there's one breakdown that I kind of had an issue with because I think we were more focused. It was more focused on a specific gender problem as opposed to looking at it as a problem with people as a whole today. It was someone who was like, obsession is about the male insecurity epidemic or something along those lines. And I'm like, well, you're sort of right because the guy in the film did have an insecurity issue, but it's not a specifically male insecurity issue. It's a people insecurity issue. We as people as a whole suffer from this issue, and you can see you can see it from the dating scene and how we're approaching the dating scene. We all have some insecurities, and some people, they allow it to take over their lives completely. And what this film does is it shows us what happens when we as people don't check not only our insecurity issues but also our attachment issues, also our way of bonding with others, our expectation when it comes to love, our expectation when it comes to romance. This film challenges that, and it shows us what happens, like the in the worst way possible, the worst consequence possible. What happens when we don't check these issues, and what happens when we allow it to bleed into other people's lives? It's the who's my ideal versus who's ideal for me. The issue is attachment issues. Having this specific like person or specific ideal of who this person is, maybe because your ex, they remind you of your ex, or maybe they remind you of a friend that you really liked, or maybe they remind you of a celebrity that you're attached to, what have you. That's the issue that we have to diagnose instead of looking at as specifically an insecurity issue on a specific gender. We need to focus on the insecurities within people as a whole. This desire to have this idealistic romance instead of just living life and seeing where these bonds take us. That's what we should be focusing on when it comes to this film, and I think that's what this film was trying to teach us. If you want to get the gist of what Obsession is about, go on TikTok, type in love spells gone wrong. There you go. And that's what I'm going to talk about. First, let me break down the process of what happens when you do a love spell on a specific person. When you do a love spell on a specific person, that person has not developed feelings of their own will. So in order for that to happen, something else has to already have that attachment towards you in order to make that happen. Something else has to have that attachment towards you for that to happen. So what you have to do for this to work is when they do these love spells on specific people, it opens up a portal to their body and soul for a foreign entity to attach to them and force them to do your bidding, which is what happens in the film. When you start seeing Nikki start acting sporadic, that's because there's a foreign entity attached to her spirit forcing her to do his bidding, and you don't know what type of entity you've just put into this person's body. That's what happens. That's why if you go to anybody that does spell work, whether they're witches, warlocks, voodoo priestess, hoodoo priestess, what have you, they're going to tell you straight up, no, I'm not doing it. Or they'll tell you, I can do it, but once I do it, I can't undo it. Like, you can call whatever. Once I do this spell, I will not be able to undo it. If you don't do it, just do not. If you hear that, just be like, all right, never mind. F it. No, not doing it. Because again, you're opening up a portal to this person's body and soul for a foreign entity to enter, to attach to them, to force them to do your bidding. That is cruel. That is evil. But people with these really bad attachment issues aren't thinking about these types of things because they just want what they want. I've heard stories like this on TikTok where there are people who love these people and they want these to be with these people despite the situations that's happened that's currently in the way, and shit just goes wrong. For instance, there was a woman who had a coworker she was in love with, but the coworker was married with a wife and children. She ends up doing the love spell on the coworker by basically making a concoction in food, feeding it to him at at a banquet, or maybe just having him try something in the break room. I can't remember specifically. And the guy eats it. And then he starts developing these strong feelings like, I just can't stop thinking about this woman. I don't know what's going on. Well, what's happening is that now he's being possessed by this foreign entity who is putting these thoughts in his head, putting these feelings in his mind, but he's not aware of this because this is not his feelings, these are not his thoughts. He's being possessed. So this man ends up going crazy, ends up leaving his wife and kids because he just can't get this woman out of his mind. He ends up going to this woman and she gets him. They start, messing around, but then he starts acting weird. He starts staring at her while she's asleep, not blinking. She would find him just doing weird things. She couldn't go out with her friends. She couldn't go to her family members because he'd go ballistic. He tried beating up her brother or something like that. It was just a whole bunch of mess. Just a whole bunch of fucking mess. And she ends up saying, nah, I can't do this. It's just too much. This is not what I wanted, whatever. And the witch that she talked to was like, yeah, I can't reverse this. I told you, once you do this, I can't reverse this. You figure something out because now he's your problem. It got to a point where I think there's so many different stories, and either in this story, either he ends up offing her because he just didn't want to live without her, or he ends up getting detained and she has to move states away. I can't remember. No. This is what happens. I was like, in this specific story, he ends up going insane. He ends up offing him and the chick. I don't want to say it on YouTube, but he ends up offing himself and the girl. And yeah, don't do that. And that goes, again, this is on both sides, people, men and women. When you have attachment issues and don't have how can I say this? When you're not healthy enough to approach these types of situations in a natural way, to create bonds in a natural way, you shouldn't be trying to get in relationships. If you like a person and they're like, yeah, I'm taken, okay, they off limits. Leave them alone. There are so many people out here you could be going after that you could develop that same bond naturally that would do better for you. But if you have attachment issues, you're not going to take it from that point of view. Like I said, it could be a multitude of attachment issues. It could be limerence. If you don't know what that means, it means having a fixation on a person you barely even know. It's you've created this, ideal in your head, and you have this fixation on this person, and you don't even know this person. But people that usually do that are afraid to get close to people because they have either an insecurity, they have a wound from a past situation that they've never fully dealt with. And so if you're one of those types of people that suffer from limerence, you need to actually deal with that issue, because it's only going to get you in bad situations. There's other people who, they have, a specific ideal in their head. That's not going to get you what you want. You have to allow yourself to be open to different possibilities. Don't, don't allow, your past, don't allow, the media sometimes, or what, your outside influences. Don't let them influence what's good for you. You need to discover that within yourself, but that's a process that you have to be open to, not something that you can just force, or not something that you do to appease others, or this ideal in your head. And if we want to fix these problems, we have to first focus on dealing with these insecurities, dealing with these issues, dealing with whatever it is that's causing these unhealthy attachments. And then once we figure out the root of that, we have to release that. We have to release those habits, release those, emotions, whatever type of toxic behaviors, release that. And then we have to start teaching ourselves different behaviors, different habits, healthier habits, healthier behaviors. We need to start approaching bonds and relationships from a healthier standpoint, from a natural standpoint, getting to know this person, being patient. That's what I've noticed in society when it comes to the dating scene. No one's patient. Everybody wants an instant connection. No one wants to build anymore. That's what this movie is exposing, is the lack of patience, the lack of wanting to build, wanting to understand, wanting to grow, wanting to learn. We just want this Disney fantasy, they call it. This Disney fantasy of a relationship, love at first sight. That's not how it works for everybody. It works for some people that way, but it doesn't work for everyone that way. And you're not, it's not your it's not your job, and it's not within your control to shape that narrative. Your job is to live. Your job is to be present, and the narrative will shape itself. Because the more you try to control, again, control issues, but that's stemming from something, either a wound from the past or an insecurity that you haven't dealt with. The more you try to control the outcome, the more you dig yourself in a worse hole, and you end up in a position that you don't want to be in, just like we see in the film. Or we can see it in other situations, like marriages that, loveless marriages, people who hate each other and they're together, people who are in relationships with each other and they don't even understand why they're still together, people who are in abusive situations. We find these types of situations when we refuse to look at these attachment issues, look at these unnatural fixations, these limerent behaviors, these toxic behaviors, what have you. We have to focus on that, diagnose that. You can, like I say, there's therapy, there's counseling, there's a multitude of different ways that we can diagnose that, we can figure out what that is, and we can actually release that and learn new behaviors, so that way we can attract the love we want in a more healthy manner, as opposed to doing that. Be okay with the process. It may not, as you get to know this person, you may not even like the person. That's cool. Give it that time. Do it naturally. Not addressing these things is what's going to be your downfall. Whether you're man or woman, you have to address your attachment issues, you have to address your insecurities, and you have to address this belief system that you have in your head on how this love should go. Because there is no reason to take a person away from their spouse and children. There's another person that loves this person who built that bond naturally, and you're ripping them away from it. That's insane. You don't. There's no excuse. If you're gonna do something that's going to boost your attraction or fix your whatever, your love life, if it's not the greatest, focus on healing what's going on inside you. Open yourself up to different possibilities and go out here and actually improve yourself. Whether that's physically, whether that's mentally, what have you. Because if you believe that this person is the love of your life and you're so fixated on that reality, you just have attachment issues. But anyways, that's pretty much what I want to talk about today. Have a good one. Take care. Good night.
Broke ass niggas.